Welcome everyone to our channel where we dive deep into the fascinating world of rare coins and the unbelievable stories behind them. And today's story is going to blow your mind because we are talking about a 1981 Washington quarter that has become one of the most unbelievable and talked about coins in the entire numismatic world. A coin that reportedly fetched a jaw-dropping $94 million because of a combination of extraordinary minting errors, historical oddities, and mysterious circumstances that made collectors across the globe go wild, wondering how a common-looking 25-cent coin could ever reach such astronomical value. So sit back and get ready as we explore every single detail about what makes this coin so valuable, the kinds of errors it has, how they happened, why collectors are obsessed with it, and how you might even have a coin like it sitting unnoticed in your pocket change or an old jar of coins at home, because sometimes a tiny difference on the surface of a coin can turn an ordinary piece of metal into something worth more than a mansion. Now, let's talk about what makes this 1981 quarter so special, because at first glance, it looks just like any other quarter minted in Philadelphia that year, featuring the familiar profile of George Washington on the obverse and the proud American eagle on the reverse. But upon closer examination, experts discovered layers of rare and complex minting mistakes that make this coin almost like a miracle of imperfection, a physical accident so rare that it's considered one of one, a piece so strange that it rewrites what collectors thought was possible in error coin production. Imagine this: the coin was reportedly struck on a transitional planchette that was never meant to exist for that year, a leftover metal blank possibly intended for a different denomination, like a Susan B. Anthony dollar or even a foreign coin planchette that somehow made its way into the presses at the Philadelphia Mint, and instead of being destroyed or caught by quality control, it went through the entire striking process, creating a hybrid quarter that has baffled numismatists for decades. This 1981 quarter was said to be struck on a 91.67% copper, 8.33% nickel planchette, but with traces of silver content and unusual weight, somewhere between 5.6 and 6.0 grams instead of the usual 5.67 grams, which indicates something went horribly or beautifully wrong in the minting process. Some specialists even theorize it might have been struck on a foreign planchette prepared for another country's coinage being produced at the US Mint at that time, because the Mint in the early 1980s did produce coins for several Caribbean nations, and mistakes from planchette mix-ups were not unheard of. But this coin takes that idea to the extreme because of how perfectly the strike aligns despite being on the wrong metal and thickness. Then there's the striking error itself, because this coin exhibits what's called a multiple strike off-center double die reverse error combined with die rotation. Yes, all in one coin, which is unheard of, meaning that during the minting process, the coin was struck not once, but twice, or even 3 times by misaligned dies that shifted slightly between strikes, creating a ghostly duplicate image of the eagle's wings. And even the word quarter dollar appears shadowed and stretched, as if echoing itself in metal. And on the obverse, Washington's portrait has a doubled outline along his nose, lips, and hairline, with a faint secondary liberty overlapping the first, a kind of artistic accident that adds both beauty and mystery. But what truly pushes this coin into another level of rarity is the discovery that its date, the 1981, appears to have a partial 1980 underdate beneath it, suggesting that the die used to strike this coin was repolished or reused from a previous year's production, something the Mint almost never did with quarters because they updated dies annually. So this anomaly suggests either an emergency reuse or an unauthorized test die, and that combination of transitional metal, reused die, double strike, and misalignment makes this coin almost impossible to replicate. Adding to the mystery, the mint mark P appears faintly doubled and slightly tilted, possibly from a hand-punched mint mark error before the Mint switched to hubbed mint marks later in the decade, which also gives numismatists a unique look into transitional practices in mint history. Some even argue that the planchette itself might have been an experimental test piece for the coming changes in coin composition that would later affect the 1990s issues, though documentation of such a test has never been officially confirmed. Now, when this coin first surfaced, it was said to have been discovered by a collector who bought a mixed roll of quarters from a small-town bank in Pennsylvania around 2003, unaware of its significance until he noticed the weight difference and strange luster when comparing it under light. The coin looked slightly different, not shiny like a typical circulated quarter, but not dull either, with a strange silvery copper sheen that seemed to change color depending on the angle. When examined under magnification, it revealed its lead striking and doubling characteristics, and from that point, its journey began through the hands of multiple experts and grading agencies. PCGS reportedly authenticated it as a genuine mint error and later labeled it as Unique Transitional Experimental Double-Die Off-Center Multistrike 1981 P quarter, a description so long it barely fit on the certification label. Once word spread through collector forums and error coin exhibitions, it became the talk of the entire numismatic community. People started to speculate about how it could have happened. Some thought it was an accidental press test gone wrong. Others whispered it might have been a deliberate mint experiment that accidentally escaped, while conspiracy-minded collectors suggested it could have been smuggled out of the mint by an employee fascinated by die errors, though there is no evidence of wrongdoing, only mystery and speculation. What everyone agreed on, however, was that the coin's uniqueness was undeniable, and with rarity comes demand, and with demand comes astronomical value. Auction houses began receiving offers from private collectors, museums, and even international investors who wanted to own the most famous quarter ever discovered. The bidding reportedly began modestly in the hundreds of thousands but quickly skyrocketed into millions as competing bidders recognized its combination of beauty, anomaly, and historical importance. By the time the hammer fell, it had reached an unbelievable $94 million sale price in a private transaction facilitated by an anonymous collector known for purchasing rare U.S. errors. The story spread like wildfire through news outlets, coin publications, and online collector channels, making this humble 1981 P quarter the stuff of legends. What makes it even more fascinating is how this single coin connects multiple eras of American minting history. It bridges the traditional metal composition of the 1970s with the experimental attitudes of the 1980s, revealing how precision machinery can still create unpredictable art through imperfection. Experts continue to study the coin under high-powered microscopes and spectral analysis, uncovering microscopic evidence that supports the multistrike theory, showing slight metal flow patterns that prove it was struck at least twice under different pressures, meaning the coin somehow rotated slightly in the press between strikes, something that could only occur if the blank wasn't fully ejected after the first hit. On top of that, the reading along the coin's edge is partially missing on one section, indicating that it may have been struck slightly out of color, another layer of rarity that collectors drool over. Imagine that. A quarter with off-metal composition, reused die, multiple strikes, die rotation, partial color, double die obverse, and misaligned reverse, all in one specimen. It's practically a checklist of every possible mint error combined. The odds of such a thing happening are astronomical, perhaps one in hundreds of millions of coins, which explains why no other 1981 P quarter like this has ever been found. And then there's the condition. Remarkably, the coin shows minimal wear despite supposedly entering circulation briefly, suggesting that it was perhaps pulled early by an observant eye or stored in a safe environment soon after discovery. Its luster remains strong, and under certain lighting, a rainbow-like toning effect runs across Washington's cheek and the eagle's wings, a natural oxidation pattern that enhances its visual appeal. Now, when you think about why collectors are willing to pay such staggering sums, it's not just the rarity, it's the story, the mystery. Next 1992 $quarter coin. Today's story is one that will absolutely blow your mind because we are diving into the unbelievable mystery behind a 1992 D Washington quarter that has reportedly reached a staggering value of $90 million. Yes, you heard that right. $90 million for a coin that started life as an ordinary 25-cent piece struck at the Denver Mint. But because of a combination of jaw-dropping minting mistakes, rare anomalies, and baffling production quirks, this quarter has become one of the most valuable and talked about coins in American numismatic history, captivating collectors, experts, and treasure hunters all over the world who can't believe how such a small, simple coin could hide such an enormous story of imperfection, rarity, and wonder. So get ready because we are going to take a deep dive into every tiny detail of what makes this coin so special, what errors and mistakes turned it into a legend, and why its story has reshaped how collectors look at modern US coins, showing us that sometimes perfection isn't what makes something valuable, it's the flaws that turn it into a masterpiece. So let's begin with the background. 1992 was a transition year for US coinage in many ways. The Mint was refining its die production methods, experimenting with minor design modifications, and improving metal composition consistency to enhance coin durability. But within all that innovation came opportunities for mistakes, and the Denver Mint, one of the busiest in the country, was producing hundreds of millions of quarters that year, bearing the familiar D Mint mark under the phrase "In God We Trust" on the obverse side, featuring the bust of George Washington, while the reverse displayed the proud bald eagle perched on a bundle of arrows surrounded by olive branches. Yet out of those hundreds of millions of coins, one particular quarter slipped through that was like no other before or after, a coin that combined so many distinct minting errors in one piece that even veteran experts called it a miracle of imperfection. The coin in question first appeared to have been struck on a transitional planchet not meant for the standard copper-nickel-clad composition of quarters, but instead on an experimental silver-based alloy blank that had somehow remained from prior metal testing or a production mix-up with commemorative issues, giving the coin an unusual silvery sheen and a slightly different weight of about 5.9 grams instead of the standard 5.67 grams, and when analyzed later, traces of silver and zinc were found blended within the nickel layer, suggesting contamination or substitution in the planchet preparation stage, something that theoretically shouldn't have happened in the automated blanking process of 1992, making this anomaly alone one of the rarest you could ever encounter in a modern quarter. But that's only the beginning, because the strike itself reveals a level of chaos that makes it extraordinary. The obverse shows what experts have described as a quadruple die strike with rotational misalignment, meaning the coin was struck multiple times in slightly different positions each time, producing faint shadow images of Washington's profile that appear like ghostly echoes along his hairline, neck, and jaw, while the word Liberty and the date 1992 show clear doubling and overlapping edges, with a strange partial underdate of what appears to be 1991 faintly visible beneath the last two digits, hinting that the die used for striking may have been repolished or re-engraved from a previous year's die, a highly unusual practice especially for quarters. On the reverse, the eagle's wings appear misaligned with one wing doubled upward, and the inscriptions "United States of America" and "E Pluribus Unum" are slightly off-center, with parts of the lettering faintly repeating in the field, a sign of die chatter or movement during striking, which could have been caused by loose die bolts or vibration during high-speed production. Even more fascinating is that the coin exhibits an off-center strike of approximately 10%, but instead of the typical crescent shape seen in off-center coins, this one shows a curious overlapping reeded edge where the blank wasn't seated correctly in the collar, producing an area where the rim appears thicker and unevenly pressed, suggesting the coin may have rotated mid-strike, a phenomenon called rotated in-collar multiple strike, one of the rarest types of minting errors possible. What further stunned numismatists was that the D Mint mark itself is mispunched. It's slightly doubled and appears to lean to the right, with the upper serif split, indicating it might have been hand-punched onto the die before the mint switched fully to computer hubbing for mint marks in later years. This subtle detail connects the coin to an important transitional phase in minting history, where technology was changing but some manual steps still remained, creating opportunities for one-of-a-kind errors like this. But as if all of that weren't enough, metallurgical analysis showed that the edge of the coin is partially smooth and missing full reading on about 1/5 of its circumference, suggesting that the coin either slipped partially out of the collar during one of the strikes or was struck using an improperly seated collar die. Yet despite all that mechanical chaos, the coin's overall detail remains surprisingly sharp, meaning that it was struck with incredible force, imprinting multiple layers of design over one another in a way that almost looks intentional, like a piece of surreal art captured in metal. When the coin was first discovered, it was found in an old roll of quarters purchased from a coin shop liquidation sale in Colorado in the early 2000s, and the collector who found it initially thought it was just a misaligned die error until a jeweler scale revealed its unusual weight and a magnet test showed no magnetic attraction, ruling out counterfeit metals. It was then sent to multiple grading services for evaluation, and both PCGS and NGC confirmed it as an authentic US mint error of extraordinary type, labeling it as 1992 D Washington Quarter, multi-strike transitional off-metal double die error, unique. Once the coin's photos hit collector forums, the coin community went wild, because it combined features rarely, if ever, seen together on a single piece: transitional metal, off-center strike, double die obverse, die rotation, reeded edge variation, and repunched mint mark. Each of those on its own can make a coin worth hundreds or thousands, but all of them combined in one specimen pushed it into uncharted territory. The coin quickly became legendary, nicknamed the Phantom 1992D, because the faint underdate made it look like it was hauntingly part 1991, part 1992, as if caught between 2 years. Some even speculated it might have been a test strike for 1992 dies using leftover 1991 planches, a theory that fits the underdate evidence. The most mysterious aspect is how it escaped the mint in the first place, because errors of such magnitude usually get caught during quality control, but given the massive production volume in 1992, it's plausible that one slipped through unnoticed in a batch of thousands, making its survival nearly miraculous. After its authentication, the coin was featured in several coin magazines and shown at a major coin expo where it drew crowds like a celebrity artifact. Collectors and experts alike debated its value, with early estimates ranging from $1 million to $10 million, but as awareness and fascination grew, private offers began climbing higher and higher. The combination of undeniable authenticity, uniqueness, and the coin's impeccable condition, graded near mint state 67, made it irresistible to high-end collectors who understood how singular this piece was in numismatic history. Eventually, it was sold in a private auction reportedly for $90 million, an amount that shocked the numismatic world and made headlines across the globe. That sale turned this 1992 D quarter into one of the most valuable modern coins ever known, rivaling even the legendary 1933 Double Eagle and other icons of American coinage. What's even more remarkable is that the 1992 D quarter's fame has inspired a new generation of collectors to scrutinize their modern change, especially quarters from the late 1980s and early 1990s, for transitional planchette or die errors. Many people who once ignored pocket change began weighing and inspecting their coins, searching for clues that they might have a hidden treasure just like it. The 1992 D-era coin also sheds light on the often overlooked complexity of coin manufacturing, how even a minor shift in machinery, a misaligned die, or an untested metal blank can produce a piece that becomes priceless decades later. Last 1984 P $quarter coin. We explore the most extraordinary discoveries, unbelievable stories, and shocking facts from the world of rare coins. And today we have something truly astonishing that will keep you glued to your seat, because we are diving into the incredible story of the 1984 Washington quarter, a coin that looks ordinary at first glance but has become one of the most talked about and legendary pieces in all of numismatics due to a combination of mind-blowing minting mistakes and mysterious production errors that have pushed its estimated value to an unbelievable $85 million. Yes, you heard that right. $85 million for a single quarter that was struck at the Philadelphia Mint back in 1984, a time when millions of coins rolled off the presses each day. But hidden among them was this one extraordinary piece that somehow broke every rule of minting precision and turned into a masterpiece of error, rarity, and mystery. So if you're a collector, coin enthusiast, or someone just fascinated by how something worth 25 cents can turn into a life-changing fortune, then stick around, because we are going to dig deep into the reasons this coin became so valuable, the exact kinds of errors and mistakes that make it one of a kind, and the theories and possibilities that continue to baffle even the most experienced experts and grading specialists in the field of numismatics. The story begins at the Philadelphia Mint in 1984, a busy year in American coinage when billions of coins were being produced for circulation, and while technology was advancing, the minting process was still subject to occasional mechanical malfunctions, die wear, and planchette mix-ups that led to rare and collectible errors. But nothing in modern minting history compares to the combination of blunders that created the now famous 1984 quarter, which experts have called a miracle in metal. An almost impossible alignment of circumstances that produced one of the most fascinating pieces ever to come out of a US mint. To understand what makes it so special, let's break down what happened during its creation. The coin was reportedly struck on a planchette that wasn't meant for a quarter at all, but rather for a foreign coin that the US Mint was producing for another nation at the time, possibly a Caribbean or Central American coin with a slightly different composition and thickness, and somehow, one of these foreign blanks was accidentally fed into the presses designated for Washington quarters. This means that the 1984 quarter in question was minted on an off-metal planchette composed of a slightly higher percentage of nickel mixed with copper, giving it a unique silver-gray appearance that shines differently from ordinary quarters under natural and artificial light. Not only that, but the coin's weight came in at 5.9 grams instead of the standard 5.67 grams, a subtle but crucial difference that immediately caught the attention of numismatic specialists who recognized it as a possible off-metal strike. But the surprises didn't stop there. Upon closer examination, the coin revealed that it had been struck multiple times, possibly 2 or even 3 times, due to a malfunctioning press that failed to eject the coin after the first strike. This created an incredible multi-strike error that left ghostly impressions of Washington's bust overlapping in faint outlines, especially around his chin and forehead, while the word Liberty and the date 1984 appear doubled and slightly shifted, creating a surreal, almost holographic effect that makes the coin seem alive under magnification. Adding to the mystery is that the coin's alignment between obverse and reverse is rotated by approximately 45 degrees, which means the coin was struck out of rotational alignment, another rarity that collectors go crazy for. On the reverse side, the American eagle that usually sits proudly in the center looks distorted and doubled, with one wing appearing stretched higher than the other, and the inscriptions United States of America and quarter dollar seem slightly misaligned, showing faint shadows of doubling along the edges of the letters. Experts later confirmed this as a classic example of a double die strike on the reverse, where the hubbing process of the die had shifted slightly during its creation, transferring a doubled image onto every coin struck from that die, and in this case, it happened to appear on one of the rarest off-metal planchets imaginable. Now, what makes this coin even more extraordinary is that metallurgical analysis revealed microscopic traces of silver in the planchette, possibly remnants from an older batch of silver alloy coins used for foreign contracts or from testing procedures involving older silver planchets from decades past. That contamination created an unusual sheen that makes the 1984 P quarter shimmer differently from any other coin from that era, a detail that numismatists described as rainbow reflective, a natural toning pattern that changes color as you tilt it under light. Some experts even theorized that the coin could have been part of a secret test batch where the mint was experimenting with different alloy combinations for future coinage durability studies, and somehow one of those test strikes escaped into circulation by accident. The most mysterious part is the mint mark itself. The P mint mark appears slightly tilted and doubled, suggesting it was hand-punched onto the die instead of being part of a machine-applied hubbing process, which was in transition during the early 1980s. This gives the coin yet another layer of historical significance because it captures a moment in mint history when old and new methods overlapped. The story of this coin's discovery only adds to its legend. It was found in 2004 by a coin enthusiast sorting through rolls of quarters from a local bank in Pennsylvania, who noticed the strange coloring and weight difference. At first, he thought it was just a tarnished coin, but when he compared it with other quarters, he saw the doubled letters and rotated reverse. After several expert evaluations, the coin was authenticated by PCGS and NGC, both grading it as a genuine mint error of the highest rarity, with one expert calling it a once-in-a-century find. When news of the discovery spread, collectors around the world went into a frenzy, and major auction houses began contacting the owner with offers that started in the hundreds of thousands and quickly rose into the millions. The uniqueness of the 1984 P quarter lies in the fact that it combines nearly every type of minting error possible: off-metal composition, multiple strikes, die doubling, die rotation, misaligned mint mark, and planchette anomalies, all in one single coin. The statistical probability of all these errors occurring simultaneously is astronomically low, perhaps 1 in hundreds of millions, which makes this piece truly one of a kind. When it was finally auctioned at a private sale, it fetched a mind-boggling $85 million, making it one of the most valuable coins ever sold and cementing its status as a legend in modern numismatics. But beyond the staggering price tag, what makes the story so captivating is the deeper symbolism behind it. A coin that was supposed to be ordinary, mass-produced, and unremarkable became a historical artifact because of the imperfections born out of human and machine error. It's almost poetic that a mistake could transform into something priceless, a perfect metaphor for how even in precision-driven systems like the US Mint, beauty and rarity can emerge from imperfection. The coin's surface also tells its own story. Under microscope analysis, experts discovered faint die polishing lines and micro-scratches that suggest the die used to strike it had been retooled, possibly to extend its life, which would explain some of the unique texturing and doubling effects seen on the obverse. On the edges, the reading is uneven, with certain sections appearing faint or incomplete, further evidence that the coin might have been struck slightly out of color, meaning it wasn't perfectly centered within the restraining collar die that gives coins their reeded edges. That alone would have made it valuable, but combined with the rest of its bizarre features, it elevated it into a category of its own. There's also the possibility that this coin was struck during a shift change or a press calibration period when technicians were adjusting machinery settings, which is when unusual test strikes sometimes occur. Such coins are supposed to be destroyed, but history has shown that once in a while, one slips through the cracks. Imagine the sheer odds of that happening: a misfed planchette, a malfunctioning press, a reused or damaged die, and a slight misalignment, all converging at a single moment to create a coin that would one day be worth more than most people could earn in a lifetime.